This is the most amazing thing that I've seen. Every time PlayStation detractors or detractors of any kind open their mouths to say anything that they don't like about Game Pass, they end up making a stronger case for the platform. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. We watched this little video clip of Sean Layden talking about how Game Pass doesn't really benefit the developers. He said that they can, that the publisher can make it work. The house always wins, right? He said that. And then he said, well, but for the developer, most developers can't really, do well with the so-called pennies that come from these subscription services. So he reinforces his belief because he said, I think in these cases where he said these things, that it's not necessarily a platform that benefits developers. Now, Sean Layden's arguments are very simple to go ahead and counter by just two things. Thing number one is that these developers continue to bring their games to Game Pass. That's the very first thing. They refuse to stop bringing their games to Game Pass. And thing number two is they actually have the option to not bring their games to Game Pass. But somewhere, somehow, it seems like some PlayStation fans or pro PlayStation or maybe anti Game Pass, I don't know what to even categorize these folk in, think that somewhere, somehow, Game Pass is this bad thing because of what Sean said. In fact, somebody even went ahead and, in a sense, maybe agreed, but then put the caveat that made Game Pass stronger. Let me show you. It was a double team. Two PlayStation fans, I think, made a strong case for Game Pass. Listen, Orchardman19, shout out to you. Thank you for your comments. You said, it doesn't math out for developers. That's what Sean Layden said in this clip. He said, Bud, not hard to understand, okay? I never even said anything. It maths out for the publisher, but Sean claims it doesn't math out for the developers. Then he said the house always wins, always makes money, aka Microsoft. Then you said a few articles already mentioned the low percentage they make on Game Pass. Which articles? Who wrote the articles? Which developers gave you the percentage that they make on Game Pass? Then you said, I think it's time you listen to the real people who put their games on Game Pass rather than Microsoft talk. Then you said Sony pillars are strong. Now, here's the problem. I've been listening to these people, and all they keep saying is that we're going to keep bringing more of our games to Game Pass. In fact, some of them outright rebel against the notion of them not taking their games to Game Pass. For instance, the developer rebellion. A very, very astute observation that not only have they brought one game to Game Pass this year, but two, and we haven't even completed the month of March. So what's going on? Are these developers crazy? Perhaps they might be. Or what else may be going on? Are these developers, in a sense, seeing that there is a proposition here for them to make more money? Perhaps there is. But the one thing that Sean Layden is not really pointing out here is that of all these devs, they all have the option to say, no, we're not going to go to Game Pass. We're going to go for the moon. Like he encourages them to. They want to shoot for the moon. Then the pennies from subscription services don't do that for them, which means that they actually can take the option to not go on Game Pass. But I think some of the folk who are trying to make this particular, conversation a thing miss that sometimes. So one of our other audience members said to Orchardman, I agree with this take, which is that it doesn't work for the developers. And then he said, any and all subscription services, yes, even from Sony, should be only used as an option as developers receive more money than from a subservice service. Okay? Xbox, everybody, the developers themselves all agree with you because there is nowhere in Xbox's publishing requirements that you have to put your game on Game Pass. I know that because I've actually started my application process in terms of trying to put my game on Xbox. And there is no requirement for that. So I'm telling you from first-hand experience, and I'm telling you from basically general knowledge that everybody knows that Xbox is not forcing you to put your game on Game Pass. So this notion that somewhere, somehow, that Game Pass is not an option for developers, or maybe you're not insinuating, perhaps it's me. It probably is my problem. I'm reading it wrong. That probably is the issue. But then Orchardman, you come out and said, because I replied to you and I said, no, they're not being forced to put their games on Game Pass. And then I said, stop with all this elementary coddling that you want businessmen and women to, of the game dev to receive. And then you came out and finally said, you tout Game Pass as the holy grail and many of us don't. That's not true. In fact, I recommend that if you do not like something, don't spend your money on it. I'm probably one of the few people that will tell you, don't bother spending your money on what you don't like. I will straight up tell you, don't touch Game Pass. My only thing that I request is before you make any claims about it, at least understand what it is that you're saying about it. Because if not, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be asking some really important questions. And if your comments are found lacking, I'm going to be asking myself, what did I just read? You said this, Hi-Fi Rush suddenly closing after successful 4 million players on Game Pass? What does that have to do with these developers that Sean Layden is talking about? Because last I remembered, Concord was not on Game Pass, but it closed, but at least somebody was willing to pick up Hi-Fi Rush, of which the developers at Tango, they had a very different situation with their creator leaving and other developers leaving the studio. However, it doesn't even really matter what the extenuating circumstances are. If a game or a studio is not performing as well, the company reserves the right to do whatever it wants. Sad reality, and I hate it when developers have to lose their jobs or face uncertainty. I'm the first that will tell you. But all of this is actually weird. You said Microsoft's own president wouldn't even comment on it. That's not true. If you actually go and look at what's going on, Phil Spencer has said before that Game Pass is profitable. This is something that for some reason, a lot of PlayStation fans, you actually, for some reason, miss this memo every single time. Even Sean Layden here said, yeah, you can make it work. It can be profitable for the platform holder and the publisher. I don't even know if you got that part or if you missed it, but this is absolutely not true. Then you said again, plenty of articles online show Game Pass cannibalizes sales. So does exclusivity. In fact, if we wanted to go ahead and take a look at it, did y'all know that PlayStation Plus actually has day one games? Because for some reason, there seems to be a disconnect in terms of, day one launches of games on PlayStation Plus. This is something that a lot of people don't ever say when they're talking about Game Pass, that there have been games that launched day one on PlayStation Plus. So could it be that PlayStation Plus is better for the industry and developers, yet Game Pass that's doing basically something similar is bad? Could this be fanboyism rearing its head again? Or are you trying to make an argument that's coming from a place of neutrality? You said Sean, the old CEO, confirms now the house always wins, aka Microsoft, not developers. Well, Sean has not explained why these developers keep coming back. Capcom, they came back. EA came back. Rebellion came back. Koei Tecmo is coming back. It's like they keep coming back for a beating. They must be sadistic, these developers, the lot of them. The only good thing Game Pass does for developers is give them money up front to develop a game, and that's it. Orcherman, you don't know about Game Pass. I thought you actually had an idea how Game Pass worked, but you don't. Because how is that possible that they would give money up front to a developer when there are old games on Game Pass that had nothing to do with Xbox, that were developed outside of Game Pass, that were developed even years when Game Pass was in its infancy stage, and just for the most part have nothing to do with Game Pass. In fact, let me blow your mind. How the heck is a game, or did a game like Sifu, which was an exclusive outside of Steam and an exclusive outside of Xbox, have anything to do with Xbox giving them money upfront for development? I don't know where y'all are getting this particular story from. Then you said the developers still want all those sales on other platforms to actually make real money for their company. No one is stopping them. If they get on Game Pass, they can do whatever the heck they want. Unlike Stellar Blade's developers, Lies of P's developer was profitable enough after having a Game Pass launch to make a DLC. They've since moved their game away from Game Pass. After the launch, they sold everywhere when they came out. They were not exclusive to Xbox. And here they are actually looking good. While their original team, while their counterparts that went out to pursue an exclusivity deal with PlayStation is hoping to sell more copies on Steam than Stellar Blade. They're PlayStation fans. You want to talk about the house? Look in your own. There are many things that you would find there that are problematic, even worse than the things you fear is going on in Xbox. There must be some level of misinformation that has put people in a perspective where they don't even know about the Game Pass ecosystem yet. They have the strongest opinions about everything on it, and it ends up being just pure misinformation. Wrong. Just wrong. I don't know how anyone can be so confident in that. Perhaps maybe you don't know, and I have to take that as the likely explanation here. Maybe you're not aware, but I recommend and I encourage you to at least get a free Game Pass subscription. It will cost you nothing. They give it all over the place every day. Try for 14 days and see what's all in Game Pass. I think it will give you a better, sense of what your argument or what your trepidations may be. And so maybe you might be able to frame an argument in a way that actually helps not make a strong case for Game Pass. Because now that I finished this video, you've just basically made a stronger case for Game Pass, because everything you called a problem is actually not. Do you see what you just did there? And you say I'm the one touting Game Pass as some kind of a holy grail. No, you just did that. You literally just did. Because once we checked your information and found out, oh, everything that you're worried about, Game Pass already kind of alleviates in a sense, you've literally elevated the platform. And I didn't even want to do that. I just had to just point out what the reality was compared to your comments. Don't worry. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.